Slam Sector contains levels of brain rot that may be harmful or traumatizing to some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Ladies and gentlemen. Oh, I don't have anything to
mine's already open.
Oh. I appreciate the effort at least. Here we go. I got this. I don't know if y'all heard that, but
Doom. Yeah, we heard it.
Doom. This is Doom. Yeah, this is a Doom cup.
Okay. Rad.
Yeah. So today we're going to be looking at every Grotmas detachment. So this is probably going to be a pretty long stream. We're not going to spend more than a few minutes on each detachment. So this is kind of assuming that you have read the detachments that you care about. So we can kind of not have to explain everything. But yeah, thump. Yep, glad everyone could hear that. We
will give a brief overview, but I mean it's going to be brief, right?
Very. But before we get into it, make sure you go to gaussproshops.com to get your Gauss Pro Shops merch. That code Reanimate, that's only good to the end of the year, so you only got 5 more days to use that. So if you want some sweet Necron Gauss Pro Shops merch, use that code before it's too late. Yeah, so first thing we got to do before we get into this is kind of explain our scoring system here. So what are you laughing about?
I'm just, this was a great idea.
This was a great idea. This was all Sean's idea. So this is our Slam rating scale. We have Sex Appeal, which is just like a general, what are the vibes like? It's kind of like, almost like the spike factor from like the Magic thing. How sexy is this detachment compared to all the other detachments? Lore, how thematic is this detachment? Does it want you to play in a fluffy way? Archetype, does it either lean into an existing archetype for the army really well, or does it create a new kind of archetype that is interesting to play and not something that's super boring? And then meta, none of us are really hyper-competitive players, but this is kind of just a gut check, like first glance. Does this detachment seem strong?
Me being the least meta aware on the channel for sure.
I dabble, but yeah.
And lore also, at least for me, important thing is whether or not it fit the existing lore of the faction or if it broke something lore-wise of the faction. So.
Yeah. So the way that I was thinking about lore was, did they write rules to fit the lore, or did they write lore to fit the rules?
And a few of them are that, and I don't like those very much.
Same.
Yeah.
So obviously we're gonna be going in release order. I think if I got the order correct, we'll find out. But that means our first one that we're gonna be taking a look at is the Flyblown Host, the Death Guard detachment. So I thought this was a pretty good one, because it makes Death Guard pretty mobile, makes them a little bit harder to kill, which is both things that I think benefit the army. I think kind of at a first glance, it is kind of middle to me on Sex Appeal. I'm going to go ahead and give that a 6. I think that there's other Death Guard detachments, like it doesn't want you to play a lot of the big vehicles and a lot of the big sexy stuff that Death Guard has. So I don't think it's super high on Sex Appeal for me. But it's not bad. From a lore perspective, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 7. I think that it makes sense to just kind of have a Death Guard detachment that is just marching down a bunch of like infantry dudes marching down the battlefield covered in swarms of flies, so it's harder to see them and they're unstoppable. So I think that's really cool. Archetype, it definitely knows what it wants to do, so I'm going to give that an 8. It wants you to take a lot of infantry, not so many vehicles, except Blight Haulers. For some reason, it really wants you to take Blight Haulers. which I think is cool because I love those models. But yeah, it kind of exists in a space that the index detachment doesn't really cover very well, I think. So yeah. And then from a meta perspective, I don't think it blows Plague Company out of the water, but I think it has some cool tools. I definitely think that it's playable. If it's not better than Plague Company, losing access to the sicknesses and stuff that you get from Plague Company is pretty rough. But I think it has a lot of mobility tools and survivability tools to make up for that. So yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
I think I mostly agree, more or less, with what with where you're at. I gave this one a little higher on sex appeal at a 7.
Mm-hmm.
I give it a 6 on lore because I think that this like addresses one of the problems of Death Guard in this edition, in that like we're used to them having disgustingly resilient and having some sort of like defensive measure. The stealth ability gives them like a half measure towards that, but I don't think it does enough. I think it's like coming at it in a different way.
It is.
Yeah, but it works. I just would rather still see like an army-wide Feel No Pain.
Sure.
9 for archetype, because I read this and immediately thought two things. Either A, Death Guard Terminators.
Yeah.
Getting a lot of early mobility out of Death Guard Terminators without having to put them in deep strike, and just swarming the board in Poxwalkers.
Yeah.
like what, you can get like 60 Poxwalkers in Death Guard?
Yes.
Or is it 90?
60.
Whatever it is, you can get way too many freaking Poxwalkers.
I'm pretty sure Poxwalkers are locked to 10 in a squad.
Okay, so yeah, just clog the board. Before turn 1, scout them up the board 6 inches deep, and then advance them turn 1, and you've got what portion of the board, right? So that I don't know. It seemed like kind of fun, and I got wrecked pretty hard in the grand narrative by Death Guard. So 7 on meta, because I feel like this would solve some of the issues they had against my Templar army. But yeah, I don't know how strong it is. I can't kill Death Guard, but my army that's my only experience, so I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like the way that this detachment ends up working is I think you end up less lethal as a Death Guard player, but I think it plays the game of Warhammer 40,000 better than the current, like, the index detachment Plague Company.
It's really good for like screening, and it's really good for getting, especially because Death Guard are slower, getting them off the board without having to use transports or deep strike.
Yeah, which obviously helps you with your objective play, holding on to the mid board, which Death Guard loves to do because they are hard to kill, even if they're not as disgustingly resilient as they once were. They definitely still have that going for them. So yeah, that puts our slam score for the Flyblown Host at a 7.13, almost 7.14, which would have been more fitting. Yeah. So moving on, we'll take a look at the Lion's Blade Task Force from Dark Angels. So I obviously have some bias here as a Dark Angels player. I am a big fan of this detachment. From a sex appeal perspective, I'm gonna give it an 8. It wants you to play all of the interesting stuff from Ravenwing and Deathwing, which are the coolest parts of Dark Angels. So that immediately bumps up that sex appeal score to me. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 9 on lore, because obviously, the Dark Angels thing is that they have the Green Wing, Deathwing, Ravenwing. So leaning into that is always going to be a really big plus. From an archetype perspective, again, this is kind of like in that same boat. It wants you to play Ravenwing, it wants you to play Deathwing. So they complement each other pretty well. It's actually a disagree about Tau. We'll get there. They're actually one of the last ones, unfortunately. But feel free to hit us with your hot takes while we're going through these. Because we're going through them pretty quick, but we want to hear from you guys. I can
be easily swayed before we get there.
And then from a meta perspective, I don't think you're going to be taking this over even like you're not going to be taking this over Gladius. I don't think you're going to be taking this over
I was going to
Vanguard.
say,
I don't think you're going to be even taking this over Inner Circle Task Force. But it is better to me than some of the oh my god, what is the Green Wing? I don't remember what that one's called. Unforgiven Task Force. I think you're going to take this over that all day. I think you're going to take this over at least a few of the Space Marine and Codex detachments. So, I'm going to give it a 6.
yeah, I think I largely agree. I gave it a 7 on Sex Appeal. I am less thrilled about Ravenwing than I am Deathwing. Dark Angels was in the like early contenders for Space Marine armies for me when I was picking my army, and had the Deathwing Terminator new kits been out, I might have changed my mind. But Deathwing is definitely like my appeal for them. So I gave it a 10 on lore.
Oh,
because I think it's a slam dunk as far as like showing the inner world, like having you have to work together between the two sides. The only thing I would have given it a 9.5 because I wish there was a little bit more benefit to Green Wing here, so that you had to run all three in some way, shape, or form.
That was the big reason I gave it a 9, was because Green Wing doesn't really benefit from this very much.
But on the same token, like I think it's a good step forward. And a lot of my scores, when we talked about this off camera, a lot of my scores are based on how interesting I think the design is from like a game design standpoint. Because there's a lot of laziness in these 30 detachments. This I don't think is one of them. I give it a 9 on archetype because it definitely has like a clear way to build it. You know, you do 50-50 Deathwing and Ravenwing, and you throw the line in there, and you're good to go.
See,
but I don't know.
I think you don't even throw the lion in here.
You're right.
The lion doesn't benefit from any of this.
You're right. You're right. But I think thematically, like you should. And then I give it a 5 on meta because I think I would rather play Task Force, Deathwing, Inner Circle Task Force, Inner Circle Task Force, or
Gladius.
Even I'd rather, or First Company even. Like, I don't know.
No. Get out of here. We have but Dark Angels have their own First Company that's better.
I know. But yeah, I just would rather play like either what's the bikes one? What's the White Scars one?
Vanguard? No,
Vanguard's the Phobos.
Oh my god, I forgot what it's called. I know the one you're talking about. Stormlance.
Yeah.
Stormlance.
I'd rather play Stormlance or Tacticus, or not Tacticus. Gladius.
See, Stormlance again is like great for pure Ravenwing, but it doesn't care about you mixing them that much.
But that's my thing, is like I don't know, I just don't see the appeal. For me, I'm not as drawn to mixing the two. Right? I'd rather play one or the other.
I'm not from a competitive perspective, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, from a fluff perspective, this is what I want.
Yeah, it's an interesting army building like puzzle, but I don't know that it's necessarily fun to play as much.
Yeah. Cool. So that puts our slam score for the Lion's Blade Task Force at a 7.88, a little bit higher than the Death Guard there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So moving on, we have the Tyranids Warrior Bioform Onslaught. I have one note for this detachment, and it is 72 warriors. To me, 72 warriors is pretty sexy. So that's gonna be an 8. From a lore perspective, that's also gonna be an 8. It makes sense to me that, like, outside of all the little gremlins, the most, I guess, plentiful bioform of the Tyranids would be the warriors. And like, if that's what's gonna work best for them for, taking over whatever fucking planet they're on, getting as much biomass as possible, then they're gonna lean into it. Archetype 10. This shit knows what it is. This is the 72 warriors detachment. It works with warriors in every conceivable way, and makes them actually genuinely scary for a unit that for most of 10th edition has just been getting largely ignored by Games Workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Meta perspective, I'm going to give this an 8. I think it would be higher if people actually owned 72 warriors, but I don't think anybody does. But I think you have a lot of interesting like character combos, and some spicy strats and stuff in this detachment. So I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it's pretty strong. I think it's probably better than most of the Tyranid stuff.
So you hit on my point on how I scored this.
Okay.
Because no one owns 72 warriors. And like the problem is if you go out and buy 72 warriors, there's no guarantee you'll ever be able to run them again after this edition. Like altogether. So I gave it a 8 because I do think it's really cool. It like is appealing to what I would want to play Tyranids wise. I gave it a 7 on lore because, yeah, I totally agree, and it matches my experience in Space Marine 2, getting swarmed by way too many warriors.
Yep.
I gave it a 9 on how to build it because this was where the like 72 warriors came in for me first. Was like, yeah, there's a clear way to build it, but the restriction is like you have to make some concessions in how to build it because if you go out and buy 72 warriors, you're just fucking yourself in the future spending too much money.
72 warriors also only gets you like 1,600 points, give or take. So you still have another like 400 points to work with.
Get a winged prime or whatever in there, and whatever else you can run.
Yeah.
I gave it a lower competitive score because I gave it a 6 because I want some more of that Tyranid tech in there. Like, Tyranids do a lot of things really well that I worry that this detachment loses out on, as far as like being able to cover the board, swarm the board in certain ways. A lot of their range units this doesn't cover, and I don't know if this pulls you in two different directions if you build. If you try to
but think about it. Think about it from this perspective. This makes ranged warriors wound terminators and custodies on 2s. There's like a series of buffs. There's like a series of buffs you can put on your shit that like gets you really killy on ranged warriors, which were previously not good.
Not good. Which like are the worst thing in Space Marine 2. Ranged warriors are awful.
They suck.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I don't know how you deal with tanks as well with this list and stuff like that. Which
that's what your extra 400 points is for a Tyrannofex?
Sure, but you need leaders and stuff. I don't know. You run out of those points real quick. But I guess you don't have to run the full 72, right? You can run like whatever.
You could run like
you end up with
69.
Yeah, 60 something. Yeah. Okay, just lose 3.
69.
It's like 12 venom cannons.
Yeah, look at that.
Fair.
Tank, baby.
Yeah, I just think I think this is like an example of like it fits into like the clever game design that I want, but I don't know that anyone's going to be able to. Really
it's incredibly one-dimensional. So like if your opponent can deal with it, then they're just going to stomp you.
Right.
So I get that. But it does make it...
Redemptor Dreadnoughts go a long way to shredding those warriors,
As far as skew lists go, I think this is not only hilarious, but also strong.
I think 60 warriors is a good sweet spot. Tyler in the chat.
Yeah.
So overall, we give it an 8. It's pretty good.
Even 8. That's our highest score so far out of the 3.
Yeah, which we haven't scored anything too bad yet.
Not yet.
Is
Speaking of bad, let's move on to Thousand Suns, Hexwarp Thrallband.
I hate it.
I think this detachment sucks. It's sex appeal. It's Canoptek Court again. It's like not that interesting to me. GW keeps trying to buff psychic weapons for some fucking reason. When there's I think 2 units with actual psychic weapons in the whole Thousand Suns army. Maybe that's hinting towards some stuff in the codex, but we don't have a codex currently, so feels bad. Lore, I think it's fine. It's like middle of the road. It doesn't really inspire anything interesting like, one of the other cults would. I think this is just like Cult of Magic, but like worse from a gameplay perspective. Our archetype, It sucks. I don't think you're going to be changing your list that much for this detachment, if at all. Meta, I think it's just bad. I don't think this brings any interesting tools to the table. So yeah, there's my scores.
Okay, so off the bat, I gave it an 8 on lore.
8 on lore, okay.
Because I think I love the what they're setting up here, that as your monotonous automatons swarm forward, you're just, spewing magic out of something. I don't know. I kind of like the vibe of it from a lore perspective, but I think it's boring. I give it a 4 on sex appeal. I gave it a 2 on archetype, and I gave it a 2 on meta, because I have no idea how you're supposed to build this. I technically play Thousand Suns. I own 1,500 points, give or take, of Thousand Suns. What
did you give it?
4822.
4822.
I own 1,500 points of Thousand Suns. If I had not spent that money on Forge World models, I'd own a lot more points of Thousand Suns. But I like Forge World Thousand Suns, so there we are. I don't like.
Yeah, every sorcerer has a psychic weapon. Sure, they're not that good. They're not worth buffing, and it's one model out of your entire unit.
Yeah, when you got Warp Flamers and the cool bolters and stuff, it just I don't know. You've got so much cooler stuff.
Yeah, it feels silly and bad. Yeah, this exists for the 3 people who don't own / want to use Magnus. Yeah, because it does its rules overlap with Magnus pretty hard. So from my reading, I don't remember exactly how it works, but you don't want Magnus in your actual shadow zone, whatever the fuck they call it in this detachment.
Flow of magic.
Yeah, you don't actually want Magnus in that, because it just cancels out and overlaps with his buffs.
Yeah, I just it feels like it could be cool. It reminds me of you're saying, Shadow of the Warp, or shit. Is that what the chaos means? Whatever.
Shadow of the Warp, Canoptek Court.
Yeah,
there's multiple detachments that do this now.
Yeah. It's cool. I like the idea behind it. It just, I don't think it's very. This is the worst implemented of that set of detachments, I think.
Yeah, I think it's going to hinge a lot on, because I saw an interesting point, and that if you take this detachment and you lump in Tzeentch demons, it makes this detachment really good. So part of me is hey, maybe the Codex comes out and the rumors are true, and they're lumping in all the demons with the god-specific cult codexes, and this actually gets really spicy. But for now, this is a 3.75, and it sucks.
Sure. And also, I think if I'm trying to do that, I'm going to do something else. So
yeah. All right, what's next? We have the Haloscreed Battle Clade. First of all, what the fuck is a Haloscreed? I don't know what that means. But this is another one of my biased attachments.
I think it's a Haloscreed.
It's a Halo. What do you mean? Because you get Halo overrides. That's the main ability.
Yeah. Okay. No. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
I don't
know. But anyway, another biased attachment for me. I think that this is pretty sexy, if not if only for the fact that it makes Castellan robots kind of good. So 7. Absolutely, this is what Admech's detachment should have been. Lore perspective, I think lore is good but not great. I'm gonna stick that at a 7. It makes sense, but I think the Codex detachments are a little bit more interesting from a fluff perspective. And weirdly, I think, the Knights detachment, which we'll look up later, is also more interesting from a fluff perspective. Mm-hmm. Archetype, rather than it forcing you to play a specific way, like the Tyranids one, this one, compared to Codex detachments, actually opens it up a lot. A lot of the Codex detachments want you to play with very specific units, this one is like, take kind of whatever you want, and you can find a way to make it work. There's obviously like specific ways that are, optimal, but it opens things up pretty good. 8, I think, on meta. I think that this is probably, if not the best AdMech detachment, I think it's probably second behind Scutari Hunter Cohort. It's got some really strong tools in it. And we'll see how long it stays this way, but rules as written, the Halo overrides can affect allies, which includes knights, because it doesn't limit it to Adeptus Mechanicus units. It just says any unit in your army. So you can have an advancing and charging Canis Rex rules as written. So we'll see how long it stays that way.
You can give Sisters in Battle and Grey Knights.
Yeah.
Out of Imperial Agents, weird shit. I'm glad you're high on this, because you've been burned for AdMech for a long time. They've not been doing so great this edition.
Yeah.
But I don't love. Hopefully, you're not going on the spreadsheet, because I'm going to change my scores here a little bit. I'm
waiting for you to tell me.
Okay, I don't love this one nearly as much. I'm going to switch my.
You give a Warhound Titan stealth. True. Letters from Lynx. Hello. Welcome.
Oh my god. I'm going to give it a 4 on. No, excuse me, a 6 on sex appeal and a 4 on lore. And
first of all, how dare you?
I don't think this is one of my examples of like, it feels like they created lore for this to work. Right? They're like,
in
there's
what
way? They're like, here's these override protocols. I don't know. It just doesn't scream anything to ironically scream. It doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't vibe with me in a weird way. And for archetype, I went the opposite of you. I gave it a 6 because I like that the other detachments give you a little bit more of a prescriptive, here's how to build the army for AdMech. But I agree that this should have been the index detachment. Right? Like every army I think needs an all-around detachment, and I think this works really well as an all-around detachment. But as far as like what archetype am I trying to build, as not like an AdMech player, as someone who likes AdMech from afar and has some AdMech plans, but like doesn't know them super well, like it doesn't scream, here's how to build it. But I do think it's good. I gave it a 7 for meta. I think it's a strong detachment. Average to above average. I would have given a 7.5, but we're not giving half scores. So, I'll even give it an 8 on meta. I will even give it an 8 on meta, because I do think with the ability to give this to allies, I think there's some tricksy things you can do here that I'm not thinking about.
I think like a Canis Rex getting advanced charge is going to be like the spiciest thing you can do with it. Which, to be fair, is pretty fucking spicy. But I don't think you're going to get anything super game breaking out of it.
Sure, but there's like things that you're going to be able to do that I'm not even thinking about right now, so I'm going to score it a little bit higher because I think they'll probably nerf that out eventually. Maybe
they will.
I don't know. We talked. It's like side note. We talked about this with a couple other detachments. There's some things we can't tell whether or not it's intentional or not.
Yeah, like this one to me, it almost feels intentional.
Yeah.
Just because it affects knights, but the fact that it also affects like all of your other allies is like
Imperial Agents or whatever else. Yeah.
Maybe not. There's one specifically we'll get to later where there's like a weird thing where they forgot a carve out that I think might have been intentional and is hilarious.
I hope it's the one I'm thinking of, which we scored high. I think it's intentional.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Fingers crossed. So yeah, that puts us at a pretty solid 6.75 there for the Haloscreed Battle Clade.
I'm sorry I brought that one down.
Yeah, you will be. Moving on to
Jordan's quickly changing his Deathwatch scores.
Yeah, all of my Deathwatch scores are 1. It's a 1 across the board. Deathwatch sucks. So Shatterstar Arsenal for the Necrons. This detachment will be problematic. Firstly, sex appeal, 9. Nothing is sexier than big fuck off guns. So fat 9 there. 8, I think it is incredibly on brand for Necrons to just stand back, look at you, give you like a little sideways glance, and just delete you off the table. Talk about it, from like an overpowered perspective. Maybe it's a little OP, but I think that being OP is kind of on brand for Necrons, so I think it works.
Yeah, agreed.
Archetype 9. This shit knows what you want. You want to take a lot of locusts. You want to take a lot of your big guns with the Doomsday cannons on.
I want 3 Doomsday Arcs.
You want Doomsday Arcs. You want the not the Canoptek. What's the not Annihilation Barge? You want to take Annihilation Barges. You even want to take the Command Barges. I'm gonna try a Croissant in this list and see how it does, because to me, I think it could be kind of cool. I think it could be cool.
Is there there's a specific carve out for the Command Barge, isn't there?
There's an enhancement that they get. I don't remember exactly what it does off the top of my head.
Look,
there's 30 of these detachments, so I don't remember all of them.
It gives the 9th edition captain bonus to.
Oh, that's what it was. I do remember. It's Dread Majesty, right? And it's a 6-inch aura. Reroll once to hit and reroll once to wound. Because I saw this, and I have a note here. All the note says is reroll auras are so back.
I said the same thing to you. I'm like, remember when they wanted to eliminate auras or rerolls, and now we got a bunch of rerolls?
Gauss Pro Shop shirt purchase complete. Holy shit. Hell yeah. Hey, if you guys want Gauss Pro Shops, go to gaussproshops.com. Hell yeah.
Run it with your Star Shatter Arsenal.
Exactly. Star Shatter Arsenal, this is the perfect place for it. And then from a meta perspective, 10. I think this is truly going to be problematic. For example, in this attachment, the Silent King, famously not a Titanic model, can Kool-Aid Man advance through walls and still shoot you with buffs. So have fun with that, I guess. He's going to be Magnus levels of broken in this attachment. Does
this have one of those things that lets you ignore like terrain when moving vehicles?
Yeah.
That's like a new thing they're doing.
Yeah, that pops up a lot in these Grotmas attachments.
Yeah. The other one that pops up a lot. So if we miss it on one of these, because we probably will, because there's a lot going on, is not being able to fire Overwatch at things.
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting.
Like Blood Angels have that one, I think. Yeah,
there's a couple.
Yeah,
it showed up a couple times. Okay, so off the bat, I gave it a 10 on meta as well, because the first thing I woke up 7:00 in the morning. My buddy Travis, who is a Necrons player, and he's a competitive player. He just won first at some like teams tournament from a company that I recognize but can't think of it off the top of my head. And like he won first playing Necrons. Actually, he might have won first playing Custodies. I might be wrong. Anyways, but he was like, "Here's all the ways I'm going to break this," and I went, "Oh God, fucking kill me."
Dude, the like shooting utility in this attachment is like unmatched.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's just not the Necrons I want to play, right? So I gave it a 7 on Sex Appeal.
Okay, I get that.
Because I want to play Shambly.
You want to play Silver? You want to play Silvertide? Yeah.
I want to play Destroyers. I want to play the 3-legged blade guys.
Oh, Scorpic Destroyers. I was gonna say Locust Destroyers love this shit. So
no, I want to play the other ones. The ones from the yeah, I want a whole army of that. And flayed ones. So and Lich Guard. I gave it a 6 on lore because again, like when I visually think Necrons, I think of all of that, right? I think of I think of Warriors, I think of Immortals, and I don't think anyone even plays some Warriors this edition, which is a bummer. I give it a 9 on Archetype because there's a very clear way, right? It's Ironstorm for Necrons, but better. And again, 10 on meta. I think it's really, really, really fucking strong. I think it's probably the strongest attachment out of this batch. Just because, hey, Jordan, what was the last game we played?
Necron's Deathwatch. No, not Deathwatch.
No,
what were you playing? You were playing...
I was playing Anvil Siege Force, which was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was before the heavy intercessor buff and the intercessor buff, which would have changed that list a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah,
didn't
I
go
think
well.
I think this is hands down the strongest detachment in the bunch.
Yeah.
Did I give
easily.
anything else? No, nothing else anywhere close. But yeah, I mean, if even I can look at this and go, "Fuck me, I don't want to play against this," saying a lot.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So Sean, I'm gonna kind of let you take the wheel on the next one. Unsquatted Deathwatch.
Okay.
I'm gonna spit my scores out real quick, just so we have them. 8 on sex appeal because I just think Deathwatch is cool. I'm gonna give this a 9 on lore. Deathwatch are just a very lore heavy subfaction, and I think they played with it really well. Archetype 9. You take kill teams. Hell yeah, the shit fucks. 8. I think it's got a lot of cool utility to make it pretty high on the meta score.
How hard is it for you to get your Deathwatch on the table?
Not.
Okay, you should do that. This is such a weird detachment for me because I wanted to give this 10s across the board. I'm just so happy with what they've done here. There's a lot of things that they've done really well. For the most part, it's Black Spear Task Force, but done better. No, I didn't give it 10s across the board. So I try to be very careful with Deathwatch and Templars because I know I'm super biased. I give it an 8 on Sex Appeal. I give it a 9 on Lore. I gave it a 9 on Archetype. And I gave it a 7 on competitiveness.
Damn, we were almost the same.
Because I think it's really strong, but I wish the stratagems hit your other Astartes units. If you can hit your other Astartes units with stratagems, I would be in. I'd be a 9 on meta.
So when you're list building for this, how much do you think you're taking just like standard Space Marine stuff?
So this is the big difference between Deathwatch now and Deathwatch at the beginning of 10th. At the beginning of 10th, everyone was playing Deathwatch. I was the oddball, and then I was playing all the weird kill teams. I had one of each kill team, and everyone on the Deathwatch subreddit and everyone in competitive like discussion, you're running like Inceptors and Suppressors and like, you know, weird anything you can do to benefit from Deathwatch's corner cases on the stratagems. So they kind of removed that here. I do want to shout out each of the data sheets has a little lore blurb. And if you are a Deathwatch player, read those because they actually do a good job adding to the lore blurbs, especially on the Fortis kill team and the new one, the Talon Strike kill team, because they talk about how they're evolving what Gilliman and whatever the name of the watch captain is that worked with him to develop the new Deathwatch. They talk about the evolution to get to this point.
Oh my god, wait. Deathwatch got lore advancements?
Deathwatch got new lore in this, which is super cool.
I missed that.
Because there's like this problem with Deathwatch where and we kind of talked about this. I'm not going to go too long about this because we talked about this when we bitched about Deathwatch 3 months ago. There's this idea that Deathwatch is part of the Inquisition. There's this idea that the Grey Knights are part of the Inquisition and the Sisters are part of the Inquisition. They're not. They get conscripted by the Inquisition, but otherwise they are a standalone force. And GW sort of brought them back to that.
Is that true for Sisters? Aren't Sisters straight up just the militant arm of the Ecclesiarchy?
The Ecclesiarchy is not the Inquisition.
I guess that's fair. Yeah.
Right. So that's where that's like people are like, oh well, they're the Ordo Malleus, whichever one they are. It's like no, or Hereticus. They're Hereticus. Their Ordo Hereticus is militant arm. No, they're the Ecclesiarchy's militant arm. They just also get conscripted to help out Ordo. Like the 3 sub factions. Like, anyways, that's always a lore gripe with me that it's where it's like the shovels with Krieg. It's like, yeah, it's like a thing, but it's not a thing the way you're talking about it, right? Like, it's less of a thing than you think it is.
Sounds like you'd get along with Bricky.
Yeah, probably. It's like, yeah, I lean away from a lot of the trope stuff, but I think overall this is really strong. I think overall they fixed a lot of things, giving us Infernus and Desolators for the
Deathwatch bolt rifles, strength 5 AP2 lethal.
Which that's the thing that fucking scares me with this is what are the points going to look like after this starts hitting the table?
Yeah.
How much is that going to twist? I don't know. but Deathwatch bolt rifles, I think, are a great middle ground between us having an army rule for special issue ammunition and just making our bolt rifles better. Again, it's kind of a bummer I can't give that to intercessor squads, but with the way they've buffed intercessor squads, that would be awful. So
yeah, that would
I don't know.
suck.
Yeah. This is super exciting to me. I have plans. I literally went out and eBayed a bunch of parts and stuff to build the missing parts I need for kill teams, and I'm going to go buy more Inceptors tomorrow and an attack bike or a Invader ATV, whatever. I think this is fun. I think it's a lot of interesting things. Of note, you get double rights of battle in this because they changed the Watchmaster to go into Imperial Agents, and then they didn't change it back for this. So he has his own version of rights of battle. It's got a different name. So you can use it twice. But yeah, I think generally we somehow have a lot of Deathwatch players in our chat, in our fan base, for us not ever playing Deathwatch on the channel.
I mean, that's just because we attract weirdos. So
we attract all dozen Deathwatch players. Yeah, I think this makes most people who play Deathwatch pretty freaking happy. So yeah, we lost firstborn kill teams, but whatever, it's fine.
Now I feel bad for you guys when this goes away again next edition, but
right, and so that's my fear. We've talked about this a lot, right? How much time and energy do I devote to building this? Probably not a lot, right? I might buy a couple boxes, but I'm not going all out like I did with my Templars.
Yeah.
They definitely stick to my back burner army for now, even though they're my favorite.
All right, hell yeah, that gives us a pretty strong 8.38 on the Slam score.
And everyone knows that's the Deathwatch lucky number.
I believe you. Moving on. The Veiled Blade Elimination Force, Imperial Agents. Holy fuck. Sex appeal? Absolutely not. I have like zero interest in playing an assassin's army. Doesn't appeal to me at all. But lore? Fucking hell yeah. 9, baby. 9 out of 10. That shit fucks. Archetype, you take all 4 assassins, and then the rest of your army does not matter. Meta, 2. Your detachment rule for this army, for this detachment, is you are forced to take enhancements. That's the whole detachment rule. It's incredible. It's absolute garbage. This detachment sucks. But it is so funny, and it, like, having an entire detachment centered around just taking 4 assassins is incredible for Imperial Agents. Nobody's playing Imperial Agents competitively anyway, so who gives a fuck? But yeah.
Can you take more than 4?
No, you can only take each assassin once.
Okay, but you can take the Forge World ones if you're using Legends. Aren't there more assassins for Forge World? Okay, cool.
I think it only cares about the 4, but
yeah, it only cares about the 4. But you might as well. Well, there might be, I don't know, stratagems might target assassins specifically, but either way, I gave it an 8 for sex appeal because this is what I want. I want weird.
This is weird.
It's weird. I want them to. Okay, these detachments have to be things that didn't fit in the codex and aren't going to be in upcoming codices. Codices, both work. So they have to be weird. They have to be different. This is fucking cool, right? I want the same thing for Inquisitors. Like, I want this detachment, but for Inquisitors.
Okay.
But you need to be able to. There's only one generic Inquisitor right now, so it really doesn't work. And then I have a 9 on lore because, again, it's the same thing you said. It's fucking cool. It works really well. It makes assassins legitimately scary because they're supposed to be. I gave it a 8 on archetype and a 1 on meta because I think it's ass. But I think it's so cool. And it tells you how to build it, right? I think the one puzzle that you then have to figure out is, okay, what's the rest of my army look like? Because how many points is the 4 assassins? I don't know. It's like 150 each with enhancements, give or take.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how the maths because I don't care about building an entire Imperial Agents list. I do not care at all. Nobody is playing Imperial Agents competitively. This is a 6.13 on the Slam score, above average, but that is very much carried by the lore and archetype here.
Cool factor. It's cool. That's it.
All right. So, what's next? We have the Adeptus Custodes, Solar Spearhead. I'm sure Matt would give us an earful about this, but he's not here. So we're gonna talk out of our ass for a minute about it.
I think he'll agree with our scores, though.
I'm gonna give this an 8 on sex appeal. Dreadnought stonks are through the fucking roof. This makes your dreadnoughts run fast as fuck and punch God. So, I'm gonna give that a fat 8 on that. 7 on lore. I think it's cool to finally have some representation for the Custodians Dreadnoughts here. From a rules perspective, I'm gonna give this a 9 on archetype. It very clearly wants you to build dreadnoughts and vehicles and stuff. So armored custodies, which is cool. And then 8 on meta. The fact that this gives buffs to stuff like the Caladius Grav Tank, which is already very strong, I think sets this detachment apart from the rest of the Adeptus Custodes Codex, which is notably pretty fucking weak. So that bumps it up to, I think, an 8 on the meta score there. Sean, what do you think?
It is taking everything in me to not build the Custodes army.
So here's why that would suck. Because this detachment buffs a lot of Forge World stuff. Which is odd.
I own, I think last count, 18 dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
Might be more. I love dreadnoughts. They're my favorite thing in Warhammer 40,000 by a long shot. I give it a 10 on sex appeal. Because I brought 5 dreadnoughts to the grand narrative. I would have brought more if I could. I give it a 4 on lore because I don't think I'll come back to this because I got a little bit of a mini rant about this.
Okay.
I gave it a 10 on archetype because it's very clear archetype of build dreadnoughts. It also benefits other vehicles.
Yeah, that's why I was talking about the Caladius.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. They've got great other like vehicles, but it's telling you to play dreadnoughts.
It is telling you to play dreadnoughts for sure.
They also get a Land Raider, and I love the Land Raider. And then I think it's really strong. I gave it a 9 because like all the vehicle detachments are strong, right? Iron Storm's the best Space Marine detachment for a reason. That's
right,
probably
so let's talk about that 4 because it's bringing it down pretty hard.
Because like they don't have that many dreadnoughts. There aren't like
like in lore. There aren't that
many dreadnoughts. They're rare. They're exceedingly rare in Space Marine chapters. Like I have too many dreadnoughts. I have more dreadnoughts than the Templars probably have. Like period. Dreadnoughts are exceedingly rare in the lore.
So you think that this detachment just like breaks lore?
I don't think it breaks the lore because
it's encouraging you to break lore by taking a bunch of dreadnoughts.
It's encouraging you to break the lore. It breaks the lore if you and the guy 2 tables over at a tournament or at the grand narrative is also playing this detachment with a bunch of dreadnoughts. Right? So that's my issue. It's less that like it's not cool because it's really cool to have this idea that like, yeah, these fucking Sword and Shield dreadnoughts are really gonna kick ass. But it's too many. There's like what, 10,000 Custodes?
Yeah.
Ever?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not making any more. They're not making any more dreadnought suits for them. It's however many dreadnought suits they currently have, and that's it. Right? Like they can put new people into dreadnoughts.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's my lore gripe. Otherwise, this would have been the highest scoring detachment on the list. My bad.
I can't believe you ruined
on both
it.
ways, right?
Yeah, you gave it a couple 10s. This would have been pretty high.
Yeah, this would have been the highest one if it weren't for my gripe.
Cool. So moving on to Chaos
Doubleheader.
Knights, the Iconoclast Fiefdom, baby. This detachment is hot. I'm gonna give it a 9 on sex appeal, and a lot of that is because of the lore. So, just having these giant hulking chaos corrupted war machines lumbering around the battlefield, surrounded by hordes of the unwashed masses, worshipping them at their feet, that fucking rules. Archetype is okay. It wants you to take like 60 cultists, and then outside of that, you're building your like Chaos Knights list the same as you have been. You're probably taking maybe one big knight, but mostly war dogs. So I don't think it changes things up that much. And then from a meta perspective, I think maybe like a 5. I don't think this is as good. I think I gotta go to a 4. I think I gotta give it a 4. I don't think this is as good as the Index Detachment, and the Index Detachment isn't that good. But this like actively discourages you from taking as many war dogs as you possibly could, which is, you know, the way to play Chaos Knights currently. So yeah. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
10.
10?
10
on sex appeal. Okay.
10 on lore.
10 on lore. Hell yeah.
8 on archetype.
Okay.
And I don't think it's very good. I give it a 2 on meta.
A 2?
I give it a 2 because
I don't think it's actively bad.
I don't think it's actively bad either. But the War Dogs comment. So again, I've only played the number of games I've played of 40k is very small compared to the rest of the Slammies. But I've played a couple Knights games. It's always War Dogs, right? And when I found out War Dogs are like 140 to 170 points, I'm like, Jesus Christ, like. But I think this detachment is so fucking cool. And I think this is the one we were talking about earlier that's got the weird rule.
This is.
So Jordan.
So,
which is why I gave it a 10 on sex appeal and lore, because of the weird rule.
So, the way this rule is written, if you're playing a mirror match against another person playing this detachment, you can also
Or
eat their...
CSM, right?
Maybe. I would have to look at the wording. But for sure in the mirror match, you can eat your opponent's cultists as well. There's nothing that stops you. It doesn't say friendly. It just says whatever damned units, I think.
Yeah, so it doesn't even have to be CSM. It could be anything with the damned keyword. Or it doesn't have to be Chaos Knights. It could be anything with the damned keyword.
So, yeah, you can eat your opponent's cultists. Rules as written.
Which is really fitting in the lore, and it's really fitting, like, makes it really fucking cool, right?
And it's, like, not, like, something that breaks the game. It's just, like, a weird, interesting little mechanic that will probably come up once ever. So I hope it's intentional, but I know Games Workshop hates fun, so I'm waiting for them to get rid of it.
So my reason why I think it's not intentional is because it's going to feel like a gotcha to your opponent.
Everything feels like a gotcha to your opponent unless you tell them. They put cultists down and you're like, hey, I'm going to eat your cultists just so you know.
But it's like, if they never looked at the rule that way, right? Like, it's just going to feel like, no, that's not how that's supposed to work. There's no way. You know what I mean? And you're going to get a judge call, and I know, I agree with like how it works.
That will absolutely get FAQ'd. It will get FAQ'd because Games Workshop hates fun. Just like they ruined my Gene Stealer cult list that I was going to take to the Grand Narrative.
Yeah. But definitely one of the cooler detachments.
Chaos Knights detachments at 50% win rate?
See, this is why we don't.
That's crazy. So here is the thing that Elliot turned me on to that I didn't realize, and somebody in chat brought it up when we were playing the Chaos Knights game, I think last week. You can take a Despoiler with double of the huge fucking Gatling cannons. There's an enhancement so that you can eat the maximum amount of cultists, and you get sustained hits and lethal hits. So that goes kind of crazy. So I think that's going to be your one big knight, and then you're just loading up on baby knights and like 60 cultists. And I think that that's good. Which is why I put it at a 4, because I think it is probably slightly worse than the index attachment, because a lot of the index attachment stratagems are very good. But I don't think this is as good.
Yeah, but we're also not competitive minded ever, almost.
And also these attachments are new, so I would take like win rates with a huge grain of salt right now, and especially because I think people have been getting that data off of the Tabletop Battles app, which that data is always kind of skewed a little weirdly. So I would take that with a pretty huge grain of salt, but it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, and there's not enough events that have seen these yet to really judge.
Yeah. So 7.5 on the slam score. I think that's still pretty strong.
I think it probably deserves higher on the slam score.
Well, that's your fault. Don't blame me for this.
No, I think even higher than that, right? Like I think from like a vibes standpoint, I think it deserves higher.
I mean, the two things that matter most, sex appeal and lore.
Yeah, it's
nines and tens.
Yeah. Future versions of Slam Score may weigh those two scores higher.
Yeah. And then moving on to their loyalist brethren in the Questor Forgepact. I think the flavor for this is cool. I like AdMech and I like Knights. I'm gonna give this one a 6 on sex appeal. I think this is slightly more sexy to me than Index Chaos Knights. 9. The combo of AdMech and Imperial Knights just makes sense. So I think from a lore perspective, they kind of just knocked it out of the park there. I'm gonna give it a 6 on Archetype. It wants you to take AdMech stuff, which is cool and interesting and new. But it limits you pretty hard on what AdMech stuff you can take. And you're limited to like 500 points, which a lot of these other allied detachments that they were releasing during this give you 1,000 points. So I think that is kind of a miss. But I think it just wants
to take engine seers. Like literally, I think it just wants you to take.
Can you take engine seers? I don't think you can take engine seers.
Oh, can you not? What can you take?
Maybe I'm wrong, but I
think you can take engine seers because that's like the generic, isn't it?
You can take a Tech Priest Dominus, Tech Priest Manipulus, Scutari Marshal, Scutari Ranger, Scutari Vanguard. You cannot take an engine seer. Because taking an engine seer and like using an engine seer on knights would be kind of
you can't target. I had to check that. You can't target the knights with the engine seer. But the Sacristan Pledge ability is
right.
the
that's what I'm saying.
The engine seer ability. Yeah.
And you would have them running around under the knights with loan op. Or no, do they only get loan up from AdMech vehicles?
No. They get loan up from this detachment gives them loan up from knights, and then but the engine seer rules as written cannot target a knight with its ability.
Right.
But then the Sacristan Pledge ability on this detachment gives the knights the heal D3 if they're within 3 of a tech. So that's why I thought you could take the engine seer, because I thought they were like subbing in those rules basically for the engine seer, but apparently I'm very wrong. Either way, yeah, you're right. You can take only the Dominus, the Manipulus, and the Scutari stuff.
Yeah, I guess I'm missing something. Why is the engine seer like?
Because it doesn't do anything.
People are in chat are saying that it's busted. Why is that considered busted?
No,
I must be missing something.
No, the engine seer doesn't do anything with this. I thought
busted as in good or busted as in it doesn't do anything.
Right, but the engine seer wouldn't do anything because it specifies AdMech. So I thought because the knight ability is just the ability that this gives Chaos Knights is just a copy of the engine seer's Tech Priest ability, which Tech Marines have, and whatever. Anyways, yeah. rules written in can't touch knights, but the abilities that this detachments would give them would sub in for its abilities, which is why I thought you could take Engine Seers. I agree, wouldn't have any use, but I thought that they were like accounting for that in the rules, and I misread it. So whoops.
The Engine Seer for AdMech is different. The Engine Seer for AdMech gives them a 5-up Feel No Pain also.
Oh yeah, but the healing is like the main
it heals
crux of it, right? So yeah, you're right. It wouldn't have a use, but I thought that they were like subbing in the rules with the detachment rules, and I didn't really read the bottom part of what you could and couldn't take. So whoopsies.
Yeah, I guess I'm missing something.
That might change. No, I don't think you are. I don't think you are at all.
Okay.
So I gave it a 7 because I think it's rad. I agree. I wish you could take more points. It could be that. It could be that they're too cheap of an option. That's absolutely possible. I give it a 10 on lore because it's a slam dunk for lore, right? Like it's I think every faction should be able to take a tech priest. Like in the lore, every faction can use AdMech. Like AdMech are in every faction in the lore. They're part of every Space Marine or every Imperium faction. Like they're on every Imperial ship.
Yeah.
I think that AdMech should have been in Imperial Agents. Like the tech priest should have been Imperial Agents.
Yeah, I just think from a balance perspective, you don't do that.
You're right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But like from like a lore standpoint, you should. I think all these allied detachments for me are high on archetype. I gave it an 8. I don't like the vibe. I don't like that it feels like they defaulted to that when they didn't know what else to do. But I gave it an 8 on archetype because it definitely has a prescribed way of building it. And then a 6 on meta because I think it's really like you have a bunch of ways to heal your knights up here. I think you can, if someone's already going to have a problem damaging your knights, this is just going to exacerbate that problem.
See, but you lose great strats from the index detachment.
Absolutely. I don't think this is stronger than the index. Otherwise, I would have given it higher than a 6. But I just don't think that I think it's interesting, right? I think it like makes your tanky units tanky, and like that's what Knights is kind of all about. So
maybe I think the amount of wounds you're going to be healing is negligible, and you lose rotate ion shields, which is a huge that's a huge loss.
Oh, good point.
I thought, because I assumed rotate ion shields was going to be like their Armor of Contempt, where it just shows up in every detachment, and apparently not. You lose that, which is a pretty huge
that's
loss
like an iconic
for
thing.
Imperial Knights.
But as far as like wounds go, so you have a enhancement to give 4 extra wounds. You have a way to heal 2 wounds a turn, and then the core rule heals D3 wounds per tech priest or per knight, basically.
Yeah, I just it's like little chip here and there of healing. Like, what's the opposite of chip damage? Whatever, the chip healing.
yeah. It's like a regen. It's like it's just like a base.
I don't think it's gonna wind up mattering that much in the grand scheme.
I don't either.
Maybe
I don't either. But I don't either. But I just think that like especially against armies that are already going to struggle to, the stat check problem.
It just makes them a harder stat check. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes them a way harder stat check, and I think that is a benefit competitively. If you could just like fringe out certain armies,
sure,
it seems like a good thing to me.
All right,
but I've never played in a tournament, so who the fuck knows?
Yeah, big knights need access to bondsman again. I was shocked that we didn't get that in the balanced data slate. But here we are. We didn't get it for some fucking reason. All right. Moving on to a different kind of knights. We've got the Grey Knights. The Warpbane Task Force. So this is just Grey Knight's version of Canoptek Court. And what I'm beginning to realize is that Grey Knights are just Necrons. Because this is Canoptek Court. Their index detachment is just Hypercrypt.
Mm-hmm.
Grey Knights are just Necrons. They're stealing everything from Necrons. From a sex appeal perspective, I think it's a little bit higher than average. I think I like this a little bit more than Index Grey Knights. I'm going to give it a I'm gonna give it a 9. I think I'm gonna give this a pretty strong 9 on lore.
Really?
Yeah, I think that
Okay.
the idea of Grey Knights running around, like purifying unholy locations, for lack of a better term, just makes a lot of sense, and especially because it's leaning heavily into the purifier squads.
Sure.
I think that it's basically Ghostbusters Grey Knights, and I think that's really cool. I'm gonna give this a 7 on archetype, because while you're probably gonna be building your list pretty similarly to current Grey Knights, it definitely wants you to lean a little bit more into shooting. With the Purifier squads and a couple of other shooting Grey Knights units get a little bit stronger from this. So you're gonna be able to tweak that a little bit, but it's not insanely pushing you in one direction or the other. And then I'm going to give it a 6 on competitive. I think that this is probably going to wind up being slightly better than Index Grey Knights. It strengthens their offense a pretty decent bit. You do lose some mobility and survivability from the base, from the Index detachment, but I think that this will probably, being killier will help a lot, because that's something that Grey Knights kind of suck at right now. So yeah.
So I love this attachment.
Yeah?
I recently went on a little Grey Knights lore binge for
okay.
reasons. Talking to Ashton.
Uh-huh.
And looking some stuff up. So the order of so the Grey Knights split into 8 orders. The Order of Purifiers is one of the orders, and it is led by Castle and Crow.
Yep.
And that is the only order that gets Purifiers. So this is a really cool like slam dunk from lore perspective and from like archetype perspective for me. I gave it an 8, a 9, and a 7.
8, 9, 7. All right.
I think this, like, reading this is very cool to me in a way that, like, I think Ashton had similar problems where, like, that first attachment doesn't feel very Grey Knights-y, whereas this very much feels, like you said, like Ghostbusters Grey Knights, right? Like, this is about slaying demons, and that's what Grey Knights want to do, and that's what Grey Knights players want to do. Yeah. So that, to me, gets it really high. And I just think it's really cool. I wish that I gave Purifiers Battleline, because they are not Battleline.
I think that would have made this higher up on the meta score for me.
Well, and just like from an everything score, right? Like, if it's about running Purifiers should have Battleline, because that order is all Purifiers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like the Tyranids detachment, it gave Warriors Battleline.
Right.
Because it just makes sense.
And we're going to talk about a couple others coming up that give some Battleline stuff too. Yeah, I just think like that's the one miss on here. Otherwise, I love this attachment. It's another one that makes me go, oh, I want to build this. I want to build this army.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So that puts his final slam score at a pretty solid 7.5. Great detachment, in my opinion. Moving on to the Librarius Conclave, the Space Marines detachment. I'm going to give this one a 7 on sex appeal. I like Librarians. They're not my favorite Space Marine units, but I like Librarians for sure. So being able to run a bunch of them is really interesting to me. 9 from a lore perspective. I think if you're going to do a psychic-focused detachment, this is the way to do it. Having your Librarians, or whatever your Psyker unit is, handing out buffs based on like whatever discipline they're currently using is really cool. Archetype perspective, obviously, like, I'm going to give it an 8. This, you want to run Librarians, and there's some pretty interesting combos with it. Sternguard fans rejoice. Listen, here, Sternguard veteran bolt rifles. Rapid fire 1, heavy, they're bolt rifles. Reroll all hits and wounds against your oath target. Sustained 1, anti-monster, anti-vehicle, 5-up, devastating wounds.
Deathwatch bolt rifles. Deathwatch bolt rifles.
Deathwatch bolt rifles.
That's all.
So taking I don't know, maybe 30 Stern Guard isn't actually looking like that bad of an idea.
Or two Fortis kill teams full of intercessors. Those strength 5 bolt rifles, yeah.
So this opens up some really interesting combos with your librarians leading units. And plus they get a 4-up invuln because they're being led by a librarian, so have fun with that. And then from a competitive perspective, I think that this definitely has some legs. I'm going to give it a 7. I don't think it's as good as like Gladius or maybe even like Vanguard, but I think that it is really cool. And I think that it can definitely put up some numbers if you build it right and you play it right. Yeah. What about you?
I love it.
Love it? 10s across the board?
I love it. No, not quite. But we're gonna give it an 8 on sex appeal.
Okay.
We're gonna give it an 8 on lore.
Okay. Oh,
It would get higher. It would get higher on lore, but there's an asterisk here.
Okay.
9 on archetype because it's again very clear. Like play all your librarians, right? And a 7 on competitive. 7 on competitiveness. I want to give it an 8.
I'm gonna guess. Space Marine chapters don't have that many librarians.
No, some Space Marine chapters don't have librarians.
Well, yeah, then you just don't play this detachment.
Right, I know. Well, but I'm a Templar player. So
that's not a problem with the detachment. That's a problem with
the
chapter you chose to play.
Sure. And with the new rule in the index, I can't like use the old loophole of playing it with librarians in there used to be a loophole that you could play librarians so long as you weren't playing.
Yeah, because they changed the army rule.
Yeah,
now.
they changed. Yeah. But like for I have like 4
Ultramarines definitely do well with this attachment.
Tiberius, so do Dark Angels.
Dark Angels, librarians could lead inner circle companions.
Mm-hmm. And so do Blood Angels do really well too.
Yeah.
I think. The other chapter that this makes me like really kind of think this works really well for is the Exorcists. Like
just like from a lore perspective?
Like from a lore perspective,
okay.
Yeah. Which is one of the reasons I gave it an 8, because I think like Exorcists is really cool for this. Lets you do like Blood Ravens. Is that their name?
Yeah. I truly think that this is like the Blood Ravens detachment. Yeah,
for sure.
I think it was written for them.
Yeah, or like Loyalist. I've joked about making a Loyalist Thousand Suns army. This is perfect for that. But yeah, I think I have like 3 or 4 librarians in box, like in my closet, waiting for that I originally had slated for Deathwatch before they got shelved. So now I get to break those back out. Like I've got a Castle and Crow, and I've got the old Firstborn librarian. And like a couple other librarians sitting around that I'm like, I need to make these for Deathwatch, and then Deathwatch got shelved. So I do plan on running this for Deathwatch alongside the other new detachment. So I really like it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Oh yeah, 7.88 there on the slam scale. Looking solid. Next up, the Creations of Bile, Chaos Space Marines. This is a really cool detachment to me. This appeals to me a lot for a lot of reasons, which I'll get into. So just off the bat, sex appeal is a 9. Lore is a 9. I love Fabius Bile, and I think the rules perfectly fit exactly like what he's about. Coming into a Space Marine or Chaos Space Marine Warband and juicing him up. This is very similar to 9th edition Drukari's combat drugs. I think some of the buffs are like exactly the same, even.
I think you're right.
Archetype, I think I gotta give it a 9. This detachment loves Possessed. It loves Chosen. It loves Obliterators. It loves Terminators for once. Legionaries love this shit. So you're normally taking Legionaries and like at least a unit of Chosen. But like
so
Demonkin stuff that you don't normally take, you are now taking, because the buffs that you get from the combat drugs like make up for a lot of the deficiencies that those units had.
Okay. That was my question, was why does it spell out for those? Because that's where, not to get ahead of myself, but that's where I scored it low as archetype. So I don't understand.
Like plus 2 inches to movement on your Terminators is huge. Plus 1 toughness on your Chosen, putting them up to T6 is crazy good. You're getting T7 on Possessed. Plus 1 strength on melee weapons for Possessed is huge. Plus 1 attacks is great. Demonkin love that shit. Even Raptors, I think, love this attachment. It's a lot of the stuff that I love, which is like a lot of the Demonkin stuff, which I was hoping that the CSM Codex was going to have a way to lean into that stuff a little bit more, but it really doesn't. This
ironically fits your word bearers really well.
It does.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a genuinely like crazy strong detachment. So I'm just gonna round it out with another 9. I'm just gonna give it 9s across the board.
Okay, I was not nearly as high as you are, only because I didn't understand that, why, right? I don't know the army nearly as well as you do.
Yeah.
I give it an 8 on Sex Appeal because I think, I like, after reading, what was the book we read beginning of the year with Bile and Call?
Gene Father? No. Was it Gene Father?
Gene Father, you might be right. I think you're correct. Gene Father. I I kind of fell in love with Bile as a character after that. I don't want to play him, but it's really cool. I gave it a 9 on lore, I think. Yeah, 9 on lore. I gave it a 6 on archetype because, again, I didn't see this is how I want to build it other than play Bile.
You can change it. You're allowed to do that,
No, because I think I still feel that way.
Okay.
Right? I think I still feel that I don't know exactly how I would do it. And then 8 on meta because I do think it's strong. It looks like all that, just getting the free upgrades. The fact that the army rule has a couple different options with how you can interact with it, just in the core without even looking at stratagems and enhancements. So again, talking about, I'm going to raise my sex appeal, make sex appeal a 9, and I'll explain why right now.
Okay.
Because remember, I said 9. 9 gets creativity points for me as a big thing. And this is the way they wrote this was really interesting. So you either choose 1 from the list, or you could choose 2, but you have to determine them randomly. And then if Bile's your warlord, you can re-roll 1 or both dice. So just having those multiple different steps on how you interact with it, I think is really a really interesting way to keep that ability without it just feeling like another version of the World Eaters.
It's crazy flexible. It's crazy flexible because you can either I need this tool to deal with the army I'm about to go up against, or I could just use a little bit of extra something. So I'm just gonna roll for him.
Yeah,
it's crazy flexible, and it has a lot of tools to deal with whatever opponent you might be going up against.
That gets really big points for me personally. Just that interesting interaction there, because again, a lot of these feel phoned in, and this one doesn't.
I will say one thing that kind of is a little bit of a miss for me is the Games Workshop still hates Damned. This whole thing, just a lot of it excludes damned units, and it feels damned is just mortals.
I was gonna say that's
cultists,
right?
Cultists, beastmen.
Because that's what I like. If I kind of see this and I think, I'm gonna.
I feel like you should be able to juice up your cultists and stuff.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go with this when I first read it.
Maybe from a balance perspective, it's a super cheap cultist unit shouldn't have access to these buffs. So I kind of get it from a balance perspective, but
from a lore perspective, he does have a bunch of juiced up cultists and weirdos.
Yeah, correct.
Right?
It's a weird balance they have to strike. So I get why they're doing it, I guess, but I wish there was a better way to do it. I wish almost that points were different for different detachments.
Yeah, well, we might be heading that way.
Oh yeah, we'll see. So yeah, a really, really strong 8.5 on the slam meter here for Creations of Bile. Another one that I think is going to score pretty high is the Drukhari detachment, Reaper's Wager. This detachment is fucking dripping with flavor. The whole back and forth between Harlequins and Drukhari units, like, oh, we're winning the wager, oh, now we're winning the wager, is really fucking cool. So just like immediately off the bat, sex appeal, 10. Really fucking cool stuff here. Lore, 10. Same thing. Drukhari and Harlequins working together is like a pretty lore friendly thing, and then also just the way that they're in constant competition with each other, I think is really cool. That adds a lot to the army, in my opinion. Archetype 9. This army wants you to take Harlequins and Drukhari, and you know, there's not a whole lot else to it. And then meta, I give it a 7. I think that this is probably stronger than both of the existing Drukhari detachments.
Really?
It kind of remains to be seen. Because of the way, not necessarily that it interacts with the Drukhari units, but the buffs that you get on your Harlequins units are actually pretty strong.
Do you think this is more of a Harlequins army or a Drukhari army?
It's a Drukhari army. I've seen people already talking about taking this detachment without any Harlequins in it at all. Just because the strats and stuff are that good.
Oh, that solves. Okay. So I had to do some research on this, right?
Uh-huh.
I know Ryan was jazzed on it, but I'm like, is this like a lore thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know. So I give it an 8 on sex appeal.
Okay.
Because it plays with interesting design space.
It does, yeah.
But I'm gonna get to why I gave it an 8 as part of meta. Lore, I gave it a 9 because again, it wasn't something that like instantly like struck me as like, oh, this is lore accurate. But once I did some research, I'm like, oh, it is lore accurate. Okay, cool. And like I got to read some interesting stuff. I give it a 9 on archetype, which I don't actually think is fair in retrospect, but I'm gonna keep it. But the 9 on archetype because these ally armies, like again, there's a bunch of them, right? So do we give all of them 9s or do we give all of them 4s? Because there's a bunch of them. I don't know. And then I give it a 6 on meta. And here's why. And this is why sex appeal dropped from a 9 to an 8. I have to balance which one of my units is winning the wager to get the buffs. And while it's a really interesting design space, I'm wondering if it's counterintuitive gameplay-wise. And if I'm going to run into spots where, like, I've gambled too hard one way or the other, and now I can't get the buffs where I need them for the turn.
Maybe, but like, there's ways to manipulate it, right? Like, there's enhancements and stratagems that let you manipulate it, so you don't. It's hard to get yourself in a real bind.
Or just even the order you fire your units in, right?
Yeah, it's got a lot of moving parts and it's finicky, but I also think that like the level of satisfaction once you get that machine rolling is gonna be like crazy good.
Yeah, I just like I'm worried it's a bit too much extra headspace for me to worry about in that sort of setting. When I've got 3 hours to play a game. My
last note that I have for this detachment is I am far too stupid to play this detachment.
Right. So that's like kind of my.
But I think in the hands of like a really good player, this detachment rips.
Sure. All right. Next on the list.
Next on the list, 8.5. That's pretty good.
It's also pretty good.
The less spiky brethren of the Drukhari, the just normal Eldari. They got the Armored Warhost. I'm gonna give this one a 4 on sex appeal. Every Eldar player I know, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say I'm playing Eldar for the vehicles, or for the tanks or whatever. People are playing it for the bikes or the aspect warriors or literally anything else besides those things.
Does this not benefit bikes? It still benefits bikes, doesn't it?
It's vehicles. I mean, I think it gives some buff to bikes.
No, you're right. It's not. They're not mounted. You're absolutely right.
Huh?
Vehicles are not mounted in this edition.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only
Or mounted or not
Eldari,
vehicles.
it's only Eldari
Yeah.
vehicle units. So yeah. Lame on that front, in my opinion. I think 6 on lore, just because it's interesting to some degree to have just an armored company detachment for an army you don't typically imagine having that kind of thing. I think a 7 on archetype, because, you know, it wants you to take vehicles. I think you're just gonna like take a bunch of war walkers, take fire prisms, take falcons. It'll be fine, I guess. And I'm gonna go to 3 on meta because I truly think that it doesn't do anything. Like, it's cute, but it doesn't really play Warhammer 40,000 all that well. I think people would be crazy disappointed if this detachment shipped in the Codex. The Codex is also due out soon at the beginning of the year. So maybe
I
my
thought they already
thoughts-
had their codex.
No, they don't.
Okay.
But you know, maybe my thoughts will change when the Codex is out, but it's not out right now, so that's what I got.
Okay. I gave it a 6 on Sex Appeal.
Okay.
Because I think everyone gets excited about vehicle detachments, especially this edition. Vehicles are doing pretty well. But I only gave it a 6 because I think that their other detachment already kind of wants you to run some vehicles, right?
Some
The other
vehicles,
detachment's
definitely.
already, but it's already like good for. It's already helping those vehicles in ways that you don't need more. Lore, I gave it a 7. I thought it was. I like the little blurb, like the lore blurb, was pretty interesting to me. Like, I kind of like the pitch of it. It gave me a definite image in my head, like I could see this army moving. And same with the archetype, I gave it an 8 because it definitely like makes me want to run like as many war walkers and like I assume the like Wraith Knights, is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like I have a definite image of like this army and like it kind of is appealing, but I agree, I don't think it's that strong. I give it a 4. 4 on meta. And and again, the reason is I think that you already can just run that other detachment as this if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know.
The index detachment just is better.
Yeah.
In like every way.
This has some cool stuff like guiding presence. Like the concept of that seems interesting. There's some cool stuff here with psychers benefiting vehicles, but like, yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah, these stonks might change soon, but currently that's where our head's at, a 5.63 on the slam scale. Moving on to another detachment that I'm very biased for, Taktikal Brigade for the Orcs. If you look at our last battle report we did, I played this detachment. And this shit was fun, dude. This is green, just green guard. So that's an immediate 10 on sex appeal for me. Lore, 9. The fact that it's just like, oh my god, hold on. I need to pull up the rule, because the way that like the rules are even named is so good. Yeah. The detachment rule is where you give them orders is called listen here. And the orders that you're given are get stuck in, hell yeah, get on with it, sneaky stalking, shooter drills. It's like dripping, oozing with flavor. So good. I'm gonna give it an 8 on archetype. It wants you to run commandos. It wants you to run 60 storm boys. It's got a lot of cool tools to help you run those things. You can create some interesting combos, which were like previously not super viable, that are now actually looking pretty spicy with your flash kits and ludas. Flash kits were already good. Now they're even better with a lot of these enhancements. And being able to lead them with a mech, that's huge. Meta, I gotta give it a 9. I think that this is. I struggle to say that this is the strongest orc detachment, I think, but it's up there. It's really high up there. The
Battle Line
tools,
Storm Boys is pretty good.
Battle Line Storm Boys is incredible. And fun fact, you can lead commandos with a Beast Boss on Squigosaur. I did that on stream. It all it says is that it has to have the War Boss keyword, and the Beast Boss on Squigosaur has the War Boss keyword, and so he can lead commandos. Badruck is back with the enhancement. Yeah, they got rid of Badruck and they basically just added him back by proxy.
There's a world where I'm an Orcs player.
But this is
especially
not that world.
after seeing this is not that world. Because, and this is why, my Orcs army would look identical to yours because you've already painted your Orcs army how I would have painted an Orcs army.
I
so
stole it. I stole that paint scheme out of your brain.
Out of my future.
I went into your brain and I just.
Here's the problem. I only know I want to paint an Orcs army like that after seeing your Orcs army.
Oh well, I stole it from your brain in the future.
Yeah. So I am going to come back to sex appeal, and you'll see why.
Okay.
I give it a 9 on lore.
Hell yeah.
Because I think it's hilarious. I think the Orcs pretending to be guardsmen is hilarious.
Uh-huh.
And I had to read it a couple times to realize that's what they were going for, which comes back to my sex appeal. I give it a 9 on archetype because I want to run as many Stormboys. Stormboys are jetpack guys, right?
Yeah.
Like the guys with big like rockets on their back.
Yeah.
I think it's fucking hilarious. Just catapulting them forward is hilarious.
Battle Line Stormboys is incredible.
Yeah, I also think it's strong, right? Meta, I think, you see fast-moving units like that are all going to be always good. This gives you a whole lot of tactical options, no pun intended, to play with. Here's my problem. So that's an 8 on meta.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is it's too much reading for an Orcs detachment.
It's not.
This is the longest army rule I've ever fucking read. So I give it a 7 on sex appeal.
What? Get out of here.
I don't want to read that much. And I feel like I would forget half of this. And it's the same.
The thing is like once it's one of those ones where it's like you read it once, you like figure out how it works, and then it's like you got it.
You might be right.
The only thing that it's like I kept forgetting like which units I gave which orders, but that's like a me problem.
But that's also, I think, like, right, like Orcs to me is supposed to be like sort of just like go crump,
Yeah. That's why this is the Taktikal Brigade. And again, this is another one where I think if this was in the Codex, I don't think people would like it. But the fact that it's like a bonus detachment, I think is a big reason why people like it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I just like I went, what the fuck's going on here? The same thing with guard orders. Like, I have no interest in engaging in that sort of like gameplay.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because my Age of Sigmar army is guard orders.
Orcs can't read. Well, that's good because I'm illiterate also, so I'm right at home playing Orcs. So yeah, a pretty strong 8.63 here from the Orcs. Moving on to, speaking of guard, we're going to talk about real guard. The Bridgehead Strike. This is your Scion detachment. It just wants you to run Scion bombs all day. I think Scions are pretty cool. They're not my favorite. I'll give it a solid 6 on sex appeal there. I'll give it a 7 on lore. I honestly don't really know like that much about Scions from a lore perspective. But them being kind of this advanced like behind enemy lines strike unit makes sense to me. I'll give it an 8 on archetype because it obviously knows what it wants you to run. You're just running Scions, Scion Command Squads, Aquilons, all that good stuff. 7 on meta. I think that this is at least on par, probably a little bit better in some ways than Index Guard. I think that it plays Warhammer a little bit better than Index Guard. So I'm going to give it a 7. Scions are like in every meta guard list now anyway. So just running a full army of that can't be bad, right?
Buddy mine has the Scions army.
I also want to talk about the on my positions stratagem. That stratagem should be in every single guard detachment, in my opinion. 1 CP, an infantry unit that you have that's in engagement with an enemy. On a 2-up, that enemy unit takes D6 mortal wounds, and your unit takes 3D3 mortal wounds. That is fucking hilarious.
I love it. I don't care for guard. Like I like guard existing, but I would never play them.
I was purely that way. I was like, I will never have a guard army until I was like started converting mine to be my
your guard army. Like you and I have a very similar, like, we need to find a vibe for an army and then we're in.
Yeah. I found my vibe.
I love your guard army. It like looks sick. I would love a trader guard army, but like guard themselves, they don't really appeal to me. But scions are cool. I gave it a 7 on sex appeal because I do think this, like, there's something about this that does appeal to me. But again, I don't know that I would play guard. Lore, it is lore accurate. My only complaint is scions should be Imperial agents. Okay. 8. I give it an 8 for archetype because again, just play scions. Like, it's easy, right? Put some scions and some Tauroxes and send them forward. And then 7 for meta because I think it's strong and it's got the Fire Overwatch stratagem, or you can't Fire Overwatch enhancement, which I think those are potentially going to be really good. I think there's probably some things you can do, and this one is pretty cheap, 15 points. So it's a set, only 7 on lore, but otherwise, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I never like considered, hey, scions should be Imperial agents, but it makes sense. Like, just thinking.
Yeah, they should be Imperial agents because they're like outside of guard, but they're like part of guard, but they're also outside of guard. They're the like from a lore standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is why I think they should have. I do think they should have their own detachment, at least at minimum, for that, because there is no scion detachment in the codex, right?
There's no codex yet. Their codex is going to be the first codex of the new year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It is a little weird that this isn't in the codex then.
I don't think so. I think that they need to, like, anything that appeals to like a very specific set of allies or a very specific like sub-faction of your faction probably doesn't really belong in the codex.
But in the world that we didn't get this Grotmas, it's weird that this isn't in the codex. In my opinion.
Maybe.
Because it's always sort of been like an... I think in 9th edition too, it was an Army of Renown or whatever.
I think it would be... This shows up in the codex and it's like, great, I'm a guard player who doesn't play any scions, so I'm locked out of an entire detachment. So...
Sure.
Yeah.
But there's
I think that sucks.
Yeah. But some of the Space Marine lists are like that too. I don't know.
Yeah. 7.13 there on the slam scale. Not too shabby. Moving on to the Slaanesh Demons, Legion of Excess. We're gonna probably move through the demons pretty quick. I think the first two we're gonna talk about are pretty good, and the second two we're gonna talk about are not. So, Slaanesh Demons, I'm gonna give it a 7 on sex appeal. I know it's Slaanesh, I should be giving it a 10, blah blah blah, whatever. I'm gonna give it an 8 on lore. I think that all the mechanics feel right at home with the Slaanesh theming. Archetype 7. It loves playing with not just demonettes, but like all of the Slaanesh demon stuff. You're gonna start seeing people taking the contorted epitome a little bit more, and a bunch of the kind of stuff that you don't really see outside of Mono Slaanesh. And then meta, I give it a 7. I think that this is going to be very strong. It's very fast and very punchy. It kind of still falls apart to a stiff breeze, but when it hits like a truck and it hits fast. So yeah. What about you?
So I was gonna try really hard to make our total end average score be 6.9, but I got lazy and I like this detachment, so I didn't want to do that. I get a 9 on sex appeal. And like before this, I've never like thought, oh, I want to play Slaanesh. I've thought I want to buy some Slaanesh models for D&D demons, but like never thought like I want to play this army in 40k. And I really like what this has set up. I like the sort of like retreat and draw things in order to charge them, like as a core army rule. I think is really cool. I give it an 8 for lore because again, that feels to me like it plays really well. The army rules feel like it does that sort of seductress vibe that is like the base level of Slaanesh. Like Slaanesh is more than that, but I think that your army rules should be evocative, and these are evocative. I gave a 6 on archetype.
Okay.
And all of the, I'm going to say this like before we get, for meta and archetype, I'm going to say this before we get too far into the demons lists. All the demons were harder for me to score for meta and archetype, and here's why. Archetype, like, yeah, no shit, you want to play like demons of that god, right? But like we had this conversation, but this might be your only option if some of the rumors are true, which I don't think they are. By the way, I think we're keeping demons as an army. But if the rumors are true, this might be your only option. So like I scored most of the archetypes lower on the demons because like it's not clear. And then for meta, same thing. I gave it a 7. I think it could have been higher because I think some of the stuff that this does is really interesting. It would have been higher, except for I think you can't pull. You're less incentivized to pull tools from other demon allies because of the overall vibe.
Like I think you probably still take Nurglings, and like that's probably about it from other gods.
Yeah, and I mean like that's I'm gonna just get that out of the way now. That's my feelings on all 4 of these. Is like archetype and meta. It feels like you're less incentivized to take the allies, but you might want to for like meta and competitive reasons.
Yeah, and
I don't know if that's counterintuitive or not.
All right, moving on. We have Tzeentch Demons, the Scintillating Legion. This detachment is really fucking cool. Just the detachment rule with the tokens. You get like a set of tokens, and then you can use them for buffs, but every time you use a token, your opponent gets a token, and they can use it for buffs. That is really cool. A big theme of Tzeentch is, like change and the ebb and flow of magic. And I think that that's a really cool way to show it. I'm going to give it a 10 on lore for that same reason. The way that you're manipulating the game is really cool and really on theme for Tzeentch. I'm going to give it a 7 on archetype. It's, again, like hard to score because it's like, yeah, obviously you want to take Tzeentch Demons here. And then meta, I'll give it a 6. I think that it's ultimately not super strong. I think it's like good. I don't think it's very strong, mostly because the same buffs that you get from your detachment rule, your opponent basically also gets. You get like 1 or 2 extra things that you can use the tokens for. I think that you should truly benefit a lot more from the tokens than your opponent does. But then I guess at that point, they're kind of like not really incentivized to use them all that much. So it's a fun, fluffy detachment. I don't think it's super strong, but it's really fucking cool.
So I gave it a 10 on sex appeal.
Sure.
I gave it a 10 on lore.
Okay.
Because I think this is the most interesting detachment on the list. Like from a game design standpoint, it's the most interesting army rule. Archetype, again, same thing. I gave it a 6. It is what it is. And I gave it a 7 on meta. And the only reason I gave it a 7 on meta and not a 6 is because I think that you might be able to trip up your opponent with them now having to manage another resource. They'll either forget it or go, wait, what can I use this for? And because of the way shit is organized, they might not have easy access to the rule.
It's funny what Alpha Omega says. My last note that I have on here is the mirror matchup would be hilarious to watch.
Yeah. There is a call out here about, there's a call out in there about unless your opponent is playing Scintillating Legion.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, but I don't remember what it is, and I'm too lazy to look it up. Yeah, this is ignored if your opponent has the Fates of Flux detachment rule.
Oh, that's kind of sad. Oh, yeah, that's the reduction of the... Oh, so you just don't hand tokens to each other if you're...
Yeah.
That's kind of sad.
Which removes some of the back and forth, yeah.
Aww,
so...
I missed that.
That's kind of lame, but
yeah,
there is that call out in there. But yeah, I just think like from a game design standpoint, like that's what I want to see out of these free detachments is like play with game design in a weird way.
Yeah.
Because they're free, you can always just nerf them into oblivion and like nothing's lost, right? Like I didn't pay for anything for this detachment, right? You're not nerfing my codex detachments into oblivion, so I feel a little better about it. Fucking
Except
break
all the
rules,
models, except all the models you bought to run this detachment.
Yeah, but don't do that. Like I said earlier, right? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't go out buy a bunch of Tyranid warriors. Don't buy a bunch of Storm Boys. If you have them, play them, right?
Yeah.
Don't go buy shit for these attachments because there's no guarantee that you'll get to keep these armies in 11th.
All right, that leaves us with a pretty strong 8.13 on the slam score there.
Okay, now let's get to the shit.
Moving on to the more boring one, I'm kind of just gonna speed through these. It's just a Khorne detachment that does Khorne things, everything you expect it to do.
Exactly what you think it's
very
gonna do.
predictable. I give it a 7, 8, 5, 7. Only just, you know, for those reasons, it does exactly what you expect it to do. What about you?
8, 9, 4, 6. And the reason this gets 4 on archetype is because it's a boring detachment that does exactly what you think Khorne demons are going to do, and Khorne demons are the most boring of the demons. Like,
all right.
Thematically, they hit stuff. Great. Play World Eaters.
6.75. Could be worse. Could be better. Speaking of worse, Nurgle demons. Plague Legion. I'm, again, just going to speed through this one. I give it a 1 on sex appeal. 4 on lore. I give this a 2 on archetype. I give this a 1 on meta. This shit sucks. Stop trying to make Battle Shock happen. I get that like Nurgle's whole thing is fear. Battle Shock is a bad mechanic. Rewrite it or stop trying to use it as a detachment / army mechanic. Forcing a Battle Shock test once is bad. Shut up. Stop. Your turn.
I gave it a 1 on sex appeal.
Hell yeah.
I gave it a 3 on lore. I'm actually going to drop that to 2.
Oh my god.
I gave it a 3 on archetype. Again, same shit. But this doesn't. The problem with this is it doesn't make me want to play Nurgle demons. So F off. And I think it's fine. It's a 2 on meta. There was something in there that made me move that up for a 1, and I don't remember what it is, and I'm too lazy to look. So because I had it at a 1, and I'm like, well, but that's kind of interesting, and I don't remember what that is. So who cares? It's a 2 on the slam scale. It's probably the worst scoring detachment.
I think this is easily the worst scoring out of all of them.
It shouldn't. It probably doesn't even deserve it to. It's like this is the laziest. It's not even lazy. It's just like you wrote a bad detachment and it doesn't have anything redeeming about it.
It doesn't do anything.
It doesn't do anything. Yeah.
All right, moving on. We have the Leagues of Votann Hearthband. So 5, I kind of just like don't love Leagues of Votann in general anyway. But there's like nothing that stands out to me about this detachment that makes me want to play it over Oathband. Give it a 4 on lore for a detachment that's from a lore perspective is supposed to support Hearthguard. Doesn't really support Hearthguard that much. It I think actively makes Hearthguard worse than they are in Oathband. So I think that's a pretty big lore miss. Archetype, and give that a 5 for kind of the same reason. It acts like it wants you to play Hearthguard, but it doesn't really make them that much better. And then I'm gonna slap it with a big old 4 on meta. You're gonna take Oathband over this every game.
Yeah, I own Leagues of Votann. I'm gonna give them away as soon as I move closer to the Slam sector, boys. You used to own Votann. Here's my problem. This just doesn't make me want to play the army. I give it a 2 on sex appeal.
Okay.
Because it's like so boring. I gave it a 6 on lore because like it's not doing anything wrong. Like it's lore accurate. Archetype, I gave it a 2 because again, like okay, I want to play Hearthguard. I was gonna play him anyways.
They're better. They're better in the non-Hearthguard detachment.
Yeah, there was something. This was another one. I gave it a 4 on meta. There was something else in here that I went like, oh, that's interesting. And I don't remember what I went through 30 detachments last night. I don't fucking remember what it was. Yeah. Right, and I'm too lazy to look.
All right, there we are in Hearthband. 4.0 on the slam scale. Not that good. Don't recommend it. Final day from the Gene Stealer cults. Again, I've got obvious biases here. 9 on sex appeal. This detachment is really cool. I'm gonna give this a 10 on lore. The flavor is amazing. Just like having there's a lot of stories and stuff about Tyranids invading Genestealer cult world, and then they get there and they just start eating the Genestealer cultists, and they're all like, "Oh God, what the fuck?" And they're just getting eaten and used as biomass. This nails that 100%. Archetype, I'm gonna give this like a 7. I don't think I would go higher, but I don't think this really changes how you build Genestealer cults very significantly. Muscle Beach is dead. I don't think this changes that very significantly, and I don't think that the limits on what Tyranid units you can take were very cool.
I think I think thematically they make sense though.
Correct. Yeah, I think that the limitation sucks from a gameplay perspective, but thematically it's like, yeah, okay, the Vanguard units are going to be the ones that are going to be showing up first. So I guess it tracks. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Sure. And then I'm going to give this a 6 on meta. I don't think it's super strong compared to the rest of Genestealer cults. I think almost every other detachment that they have access to in their codex is just better. But I don't think that this is bad by any means. I
don't play GSC, but I like have a weird love for GSC that like one day I would build
admire them from afar.
No, I admire them from I've made a lot of plans for GSC armies, but like money is a problem, and it would be a very expensive project, and you know how that is.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So I give it a 6 for sex appeal. Because this is not the GSC I want to play. But I give it a 10 on lore because, yeah, it's super lore accurate. I thought I was going to score it lower on lore because I thought this was going to be lazier than it was. But the fact that you can eat Genestealers is fucking hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Eat cultists, rather. And then I give it a 9 on archetype because I think that it makes sense that you have Vanguard Tyranids. If I'm correct on which the Vanguard Tyranids are, it's Lictors and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Van Ryn's Leapers, Lictors, like, and some Genestealers, like, yeah, I want to play that. That's cool. Those are the Tyrannids.
Well, weirdly, you can't take the Genestealers from
Tyrannids. But I can bring them into a cult, which would make sense, right? And then I give it a 5 on meta, just because I would rather play any of the other ones, except maybe Brood Brothers. But I'd rather play.
Weirdly, Brood Brothers is probably the one that I played the most, even though it's probably the worst out of all of them.
Sure. But like, just for me, like, I don't
a meta perspective,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Doesn't match what I want to do. 7.7, it's a good score, but it's not the best. Which is funny because we both have 10s and 9s on here.
Like, I mean, it's a 5, dude. That 5 brings it down. Come on, man.
I know.
Yeah, but think about it. The scale is 1 to 10. 5 is average. This is like firmly above average. This is almost an 8.
Absolutely.
Right? So this is a very good, very cool detachment. As far as Grotmas detachments go. Speaking of, or I guess moving on to one that's not very good. Champions of Faith, Sisters of Battle. Sex appeal 3. Nothing stands out to me about this detachment that is any more interesting than the Codex detachments. Give it a 5 on lore, I guess. Like, utilizing miracles to make yourself stronger, I guess, kind of makes sense from a lore perspective. From an archetype perspective, 2, I don't think this changes anything about how you're going to play Sisters. I think you're going to be running the exact same shit no matter what. And meta perspective, I'm going to give this a 1. Your detachment rule here is that you don't get an army rule. So, yeah, that sucks. With the nerfs to miracle dice, it makes this detachment like really, really bad.
I'm a little easier on this one than you are, only because I think that there's something interesting that they tried to do here, but it was designed in a vacuum without the
this was designed for pre-nerf Sisters, yeah.
Yeah. So like, I give it a 2 on sex appeal just because, again, like, I don't want to run this, right? It's bad. Like, it's actively bad. If I'm running this, I'm just shooting myself in the foot. I gave it a 6 on lore, but I'm going to up that to a 7.
Oh.
And the reason for that, there is something about Sisters and having like champions and like this being a way to like empower like champions and like squads of note and stuff like that. Like, I think it's lore accurate. With archetype, like, it makes me kind of want to run like characters a little more, but it's still worse than the other detachment. And meta, yeah, I think it's 1. I think it's actively bad.
Was your
I
archetype?
think it's actively bad. Archetype's 3. Meta, it's actively bad because like of the changes they made. This would be the worst detachment if Nurgle didn't.
Weirdly, I think they scored the same, maybe, or no? Was
No,
Nurgle
Nurgle,
like
I think, got a 2.
two something?
Nurgle got a 2.
Yeah.
Flat 2.
Flat 2. Yeah. Can they fix this with post nerf sisters? No. This detachment is DOA. Like,
Does not work.
unless they revert back to pre nerf sisters in the data slate, this detachment just doesn't work.
Or if they rewrite it in some way that doesn't tie the buffs to Miracle Die, maybe. But like, then what's the
just
point?
give yourself another fucking resource to keep track of. Yeah, I don't.
Or just like a set number of buffs per turn, like in the same way that there's a couple other detachments that do this. If they made it pick 3 with those restrictions, like, yeah, that's where I would go with it if you wanted to fix it.
Yeah,
but I don't think they do,
like
because
the
again,
World
3.
Beaters one does that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that as that detachment currently exists, it kind of blows. So moving on to Blood Angels, the Angelic Inheritors. Sex appeal. I think I'm gonna have to give this one a 7. I think it's interesting. I don't think it appeals to me like that much more than any of the other Blood Angels detachments. But I definitely think that it is interesting and would be something that I would be looking forward to playing if I were to play Blood Angels. Lore, 6. It didn't really like speak to me from any lore perspective any more than any of the other detachments, I guess. On archetype, I give it an 8. This is, I don't know. This one's like hard for me because this detachment almost just feels like Gladius, but Blood Angels specific. Meta,
It only affects characters.
Right. It's a Hero Hammer detachment, which I like. And
So
meta, give it an 8. I think that it is very strong. I don't think it's as good as Liberator. I don't think it's as flashy as Liberator, but I do think that it is very good.
Okay. I redid my scores a little bit, just because, like, in balance with everything else, thinking about like how I feel going through this again, like on camera, it's making me rethink some things. I'm gonna give it a 5 on sex appeal.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it an 8 on lore, and the reason is I like what they're doing here, because I do think Blood Angels and Dark Angels to me very much feel Hero Hammer, very much feel you play your named characters, like you have to play the named characters, like not have to, but like that's part of the appeal of the army, right? But this doesn't benefit named character. Well, I guess it does, right?
Yeah, why wouldn't it?
I don't know why. I guess it
enhancements don't, obviously, but like
enhancements don't. Like, this feels like a way I want to play Blood Angels, but I just want to do it in Liberator Assault Group. Right? Is my problem. So
Yeah.
archetype, I give it a 6 for that reason, because I would still just rather play with Liberator. And same thing with meta, I would still just rather play with Liberator or Gladius, so I'm gonna give it a 6.
Right.
I don't think it's bad. I just like, because I would so much rather play another detachment for Blood Angels, it makes me not want to play this detachment.
Yeah. I think this is a slightly above average detachment. Yeah, 6.75. Not bad.
This is what the Sisters detachment should have been.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
This is definitely like a more interesting
Hammer
way to like accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
Without having to eat your fucking army rule resource.
Yeah. Make it a Hero Hammer Sisters attachment, and I'm sold.
Yeah. Cool. Moving on to the auxiliary cadre from the Tau Empire. I love this. I am a big fan of Tau auxiliaries. I'm gonna give this a big ol' 8 on the sex appeal. I'm gonna give it a 9 on lore. This is, to me, they already technically have an auxiliary detachment because they have the Kroot hunting pack. This is a more interesting way to do an auxiliary detachment, and especially because it doesn't just focus on Kroot, even though the only other auxiliary that I know of is Vespid. But I think that it is very cool from a lore perspective. I give it a 7 on archetype. It obviously wants you to play auxiliaries. Auxiliary detachments are... I mean, auxiliary data sheets are like not the best in the world, but this makes them better and cooler, more interesting to play. I give it a 6. I give it a 6 on meta. I don't know, like, again, I think it's going to suffer from auxiliary data sheets not being really all that good. But it offers some good support for them, so I think it's definitely playable.
Okay, so I one day am going to build a Tau army. One day soon, I'm going to build a Tau army. It's on my short list of armies I want to build. I give it an 8 on Sex Appeal because I think auxiliaries are one of the cooler things about Tau. I give it an 8 on lore.
Okay.
Because same thing, right? My only gripe is that there aren't more auxiliary data sheets. And I give it an 8 on archetype because it's the Vespid, or not Vespid, it's the Kroot detachment, but also benefits Vespid. And it has a way for them to work together. So I like that. And I gave it a 6 on meta because I think the problem is if you want to play Tau, you want to play the big fuck you tanks and mechs. And I think that's where the power of the army is. And while this is cool and fluffy, I don't think it's good.
I think Zach is about to get in the chat and start telling us why we're wrong. My one lore quibble is the stealth projectors, very much inventing dumb lore to fit the rules. Why wouldn't they use these on everything? Let me pull that up because I'm curious.
Do you think, Zach, you think this is better than what it is? Deep Strike your Vespid for a bonus.
Localized stealth projectors. Oh, okay. So it's like a interesting, like, lone op bubble kind of thing. It's going to do very well with high skill players. It has some sneaky tricks. And it's going to do okay with lower skill players because it's confusing. I mean, yeah, that's kind of like the same boat that I'm in. It has tricks. It's just a matter of like how impactful those tricks are going to be. I mean, you're going to just be using your Kroot like as meat shields, like Alpha Omega was saying. Your coolest trick is going to be putting them in front of your opponent's shit and move blocking them. You're going to be using Rapid Ingress a lot, probably. So it's not like that there's nothing here. Six to me is like above average, right? Like this is an above averagely playable detachment. So
you know what's funny?
I think it's pretty good.
Tau's got a codex. I don't know what a single one of their detachments does.
Well, one makes you good early in the game. One makes you good late in the game.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think that
when they get close, you hit them harder. Yeah, I still don't think you're going to be hitting them hard enough. I don't think this is going to be a very killy detachment.
What's funny is I think this is the detachment I would play.
Probably me too. It's the most interesting, like, of all the Tau detachments to me.
Unless I like went hardcore.
That's also why I don't play Tau. Like my dream Tau army is all auxiliaries.
Yeah, I mean, we were all excited. All three of you, me, and Zach were all excited about the new Kroot line because we like the weird shit. But Kroot can move 20 inches first turn with scout and buffs. Jesus.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, what are they gonna do with it though? They can get somewhere and then die. They get 20 inches up the board and then die. Like, I get that they can do movement stuff. I don't think that that's enough because once they do the movement, then they don't do anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing I was saying earlier about like chalking the board with Poxwalkers and stuff for the Nurgle one.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
like
like
Poxwalkers
just-
are tough, right? Like it's hard to chew through a big unit of Poxwalkers.
Sure. Yeah, I'm not saying it's, you know, it's interesting. I want to play it. I want more Vespid characters and I want more auxiliary units.
Yeah,
Um,
I want them
it's-
to definitely expand auxiliaries.
Like, I almost want them to split Tau into 2 armies. Like, make it Tau Empire and Tau Auxiliaries army.
I don't know about all that. That seems like a lot.
Long term. All right, the last 3 are all near and dear to our heart. They're all armies we play.
All right.
Um,
I'm gonna run through my scores real quick, and then I'll let you take the wheel.
Sure.
I give this a 7 on sex appeal. I give it an 8 on lore. No, I give this a 9 on lore. I think like a chaplain-centric Black Templar's detachment just makes sense from a lore perspective. It's very cool. I give this a 6 on archetype. I don't think this really changes how you're playing Black Templars very much. I think maybe it's more interesting to take Outriders and a Bike Chaplain now, but otherwise I think it's mostly the same. I give this a 7 on meta. I think it's pretty strong. I think you could go either way, taking this one or Index Black Templars. But I think that both of those attachments are quite strong.
Yeah, I think that the thing that hurts this is the recent points changes to Crusader squads. Because I'm going to give it a 7 on Sex Peel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it an 8 on Sex Peel, actually. I think I am excited to play this. I like...
I was going to say, you have a Chaplain Dread. Like, I figured you'd be excited to play this.
Yeah, and I just was thinking, like, oh, this is actually a way for me to, like, shoehorn in, oh, my Chaplain Dread's giving litanies, right? Like,
yeah, to
the army. There's a problem with that, though. We'll get to that in a second. So I'll give it an 8 on Sex Peel. I'm gonna give it a 9 on lore because I think it is spot on. Like, matches a lot of the stories of like castellans or chaplains like intoning off like battle cries while they're fighting. I'm gonna give it an 8 on archetype. I'm gonna give it a 7 on archetype. Let's drop it down to 7.
Okay.
And I'm gonna give it a 6 on meta. And the reason for those last 2 scores not being higher is the Crusade squad points nerf. Because I think that this wants you to play Crusade squads where the Righteous Crusaders detachment wants you to sort of play like everything. And the Righteous Crusaders detachment does benefit vehicles. So it benefits all units, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the problem with the Chaplain Dread, is I'm not giving my army rule to my Chaplain Dread. I'm not giving the army rule to the vehicles. And you still just want to play Black Templars as Ironstorm because it's better, right? So that's why I like this one, is it is an incentive to not just play Ironstorm because it only affects mounted and infantry. I had said literally the night before I was talking to Ryan, we both play Templars, what we want. I was saying I want a chaplain attachment. So spot on.
Hell yeah, nailed it. All right, 7.38. That's pretty good. All right, moving on to one that's near and dear to my heart. We have the World Eaters. I didn't really let my biases get a hold of me on this one. I'm going to give this a 7 on sex appeal. I think it's kind of cool. It doesn't want you to play Angron, which is interesting compared to Index. World Eaters, I give this a... I give it a 7 on lore. I think it's okay. There's like nothing groundbreaking. World Eaters 40k lore is kind of meh anyway. So there really wasn't a whole lot to work with, which is fine. Archetype 8. Meta 8. It does what World Eaters want to do, except I think that this is going to wind up being better than Index World Eaters, because being able to just hand out some of those buffs willy-nilly to 8-bound, just saying, hey, I want all 3 of these units of 8-bound to be able to advance and charge this turn, and also get the bonuses from my Blood Yahtzee. is kind of nuts. That's a little bit insane. All of the Blood Yahtzee bonuses are pretty strong, so just being able to pick them on a few units when you need to is really good. So I'm going to give that a solid 8 on the meta there. What about you, Sean?
Why doesn't it want you to play Angron?
Because you don't want to have to use your Blood Yahtzee on it.
Okay. Cool. I take your word. I'm just missing whatever that is. But I like this detachment. I give it an 8 on Sexfield.
Okay.
It's the one I would play over the other one. I tend to like the armies my friends play.
That's why we're friends.
But I mean, so my two local friends that I talk to about 40K the most are Carl and my friend Eric, who's never in here, but they play World Leaders Gene Stealers, so I have a soft spot for them. I think it's lore accurate. Like, I think this fits the lore. Like, it makes me want to do. Like, I like that it's focusing on like the glory of warfare more so than the blood and skulls in a little bit. Like, it's like about anointing champions and stuff. So I give it an 8 on lore. Archetype 7 just makes me want to play World Leaders. Like, doesn't really change much for me. And I think it's the stronger of the two detachments. So I agree with an 8. I think it looks really fun. I like this is the World Leaders detachment that makes me go, maybe I should build a World Leaders army.
Yeah.
Or like a Red Corsairs army and call it World Leaders.
Yeah. I think archetype kind of gets hampered a little bit here because the World Leaders range is just so limited. So like supposedly they're coming next spring, so we'll see if they get like a decently sized addition to their roster. But it does want you to play Demon Princes, which I like. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This attachment likes Terminators. This attachment likes Demon Princes. Like, I think this definitely like significantly changes how you're building a World Leaders list.
Yeah, which like Red Butchers are something that like are lore, like in the lore, and they're not really like. I don't know. They're not
a data sheet.
Not really a unit. Yeah. So this makes me want to kind of build towards that. But all right, last ones are all you. Because
Champions.
I'm gonna be frank. I didn't like this attachment very much.
Are you frank?
I could be frank.
I must be frank. Yeah. So, sex appeal 3. It's like fine, I guess. I think that the idea of telling sagas and stuff is significantly more interesting than whatever this is trying to do. I can't really. I'm like struggling to understand what this attachment even does. Like, it gives you baby heroic intervention, I guess, but I don't know. That's not super interesting. From a lore perspective, it's like a 5, I guess. It's fine, middle of the road. I think the sagas again are just like a more interesting way to engage with Space Wolves lore, and this doesn't do that. It's kind of about having champions and like wise leaders and stuff in your squads, but it doesn't lean into that as much as it should from a gameplay perspective. Archetype 4. It just doesn't encourage any interesting builds. Like, maybe you're taking more Terminators, I guess. There's not really a huge incentive to do that, but it's fine. And then we'll go 3 on meta. I think this sucks. You're going to be playing Stormlance anyway. Who cares?
Hey, I was wrong. Apparently I like this attachment a lot more than you do. And I forgot what this attachment was. Now I'm rereading it. I'm like, oh yeah, I thought this was cool. I think it's bad, but I think it's cool. So I give it an 8 on Sexpeel, actually. Because I think that the like countercharge thing is cool. Like, it's an interesting way of phrasing that. I like that it encourages Terminators. It also encourages my favorite thing, which are Dreadnoughts.
See, I think it wants to encourage Terminators, but I don't think it really does.
Sure, but like that's where I'll give it sex appeal and lore, and then we'll talk about archetype and meta, and those are bad.
Okay.
Lore 7. It's like trying to get you to play like First Great Company, like Logan Grimnar, like Space Wolves. I like that it like
this
shot.
is their first. This is their first company detachment. Yeah, because it wants you to take dreadnoughts and terminators. Yeah.
Like I like that it tried to swing for that. It's kind of interesting. Archetype. I don't think it actually encourages you to play those things. So 3 and a 2 on meta because I think it's bad. I don't think. I think the other one's bad too. I don't like the other detachment either. But
it's not that good. I like Champions of Russ, I think is what it is. Not.
Yeah, why are they all champions?
That's just a Space Wolves thing. Not that good, but it is better than this, I think. And I think it's just thematically more interesting. Like the whole game is you trying to tell sagas with your characters. That's cool. It might not be very good, but it's fluffy and cool at least. This isn't to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, 4.38 on the slam scale.
Cool.
And I think that's it.
What are our winners? I don't know. Do you have recorded?
No, I don't have it recorded.
Oh, okay, cool.
What did Scintillating Legion was good. Taktikal Brigade was good.
Mm-hmm.
Reaper's Wager.
Everyone likes Deathwatch because it is what it is.
Everyone likes Deathwatch. Deathwatch is kind of cheating because it's not just a detachment; it's a whole ass index. But
right, but they did improve. I do think they improved on what they had.
They did.
Sure. And then Necrons, I think, is our tactical, like our strength winner.
Necrons for me like hits everything. I think it's just like good across the board from every perspective, from the S all the way to the M.
Custodes is another high one, I think.
Custodes was good. Yeah. There's I think there's only a couple of real stinkers here. I think I would call all of these winners, except like I think Votann sucked. I think Plague Legion sucked.
So boring. Votann is so boring.
Blood Legion is just boring. Sisters is broken. Like it just doesn't function.
Mm-mm.
And that's like 3, 4. I can't count.
Yeah.
I'm all illiterate and also can't do simple addition. So those are the only ones I think that are like actual real poopy shitty stinkers.
But listen, if you plan on really kicking ass with the new Necrons detachment, you should probably get ready with your Gauss Pro Shots merch. Use code REANIMATE to get 10% off.
Go to GaussProShops.com or SlamSector.com.
Is there a stream Monday?
There is a stream Monday. We're going to be
cool.
doing... I think we're going to be playing Necrons, actually. I think we're going to be playing Necrons, and I think we're going to be playing Death Guard. I don't know which detachments are going to take, but yeah.
No way we're playing the new Death Guard detachment. There's no way.
Why?
It's just fine. Matt might. I don't know. I guess we scored it okay. For some reason in my head it's bad.
We scored it pretty good.
Maybe it might just be scoring worse in my head because it's Nurgle.
I think you just don't like Death Guard.
No, I want to play Death Guard actually. after playing it as many times as I did in the Grand Narrative, I kind of want to play Death Guard.
All right.
I want to build I'm going to build Loyalist Heresy era Death Guard and play it as Demon Death Guard. Yeah. Next Thursday we have another. We have a plan for next Thursday.
We do?
Yeah, I don't remember what it is. I thought you did.
I don't know what it is. But we'll let you guys know as soon as we remember.
Next Thursday, we've scheduled out all the After Darks for the next month.
Oh yeah, we did do that, huh?
Yeah, we did.
Hold on. So I got this. Don't worry.
I'm gonna try to keep.
Oh my god! Next Thursday is next year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, New Year's resolutions. We're gonna do a New Year's resolutions After Dark.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm here next Thursday.
I can't believe this. I can't believe Sean's abandoning me.
Yeah, I might not be here next Thursday, but I'm gonna make sure we have scheduled After Darks for going forward, so that we're not planning them last minute.
Hey, look, we have almost all of the ones for January scheduled out.
Yeah. So neato. And then after that, we have an exciting one, which I'm going to tease real quick. Oh, no, that's the week after. Never mind.
The State of the Slams?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing the State of the Slams on the 16th.
No idea what we'll talk about, but it's going to be fun.
Well, we'll find out what we're going to talk about on the 11th when we have our brainstorm.
Cool. Neato.
So, thank you guys for watching. That was a long one. But we got through all 30 Grotmas detachments.
Whoops.
And I had a good time.
I had a blast. I loved this. I think we're going to do the same thing when Codex launch.
Codexes we care about, at least.
No, we might as well do for all of them, right? Like,
well, I'm not buying all the codexes. Are you buying all the codexes?
No, but they'll be on Wikipedia.
On what? No, we don't use that word here.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we
do. Do not. Yeah, it'll be on. It'll be on the Russian site. Like, we're fine.
Maybe.
Or we'll get them from an Auspex Tactics video or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But yeah, I wanted to have this be a regular thing. Whether or not it's taking place of After Dark or a separate video, we'll see. But I think that it's a fun system to rank stuff on.
Yeah, let us know how you guys like the slam scale.
Yeah, if you guys have any suggestions for the slam scale, please let us know.
Yeah.
But thank you guys all, and good night. I have to go do more Christmas stuff that I was late. I'm late 40 minutes to, but oh well. We're okay.
Have fun.
Yay.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.